Hello again, everyone. Keta Kosman, publisher of Madison's Lumber Reporter. Here it is. We had Labor Day. We are at the very beginning of September, and as I was saying happens normally for the lumber industry and lumber market, this is the beginning of the slowdown. To the end of the year when winter comes on and construction activities really stops. So we did have the prices of most commodities dropping at the end of August, into the end of August. Now, it's important to note that the northern species coming out of Canada, those prices were increasing. There was volatility earlier in this year, as I had explained in other videos, because of the threat of the tariffs. And then, of course, as the summer came on and the previously announced duty increases actually did come on, the Canadian mills were attempting to, in part, pass that duty on to the customer. And so during August, prices were increasing slightly. However, to the end of August now, as we have passed Labor Day, those prices drop back down. I'm going to show you the graphs and I'll explain in much more detail what is the high for this year, what is the low for this year for each of those three main commodities that we explain here on YouTube: Western spruce, Eastern spruce pine fir, and Southern yellow pine on the east side. These are all the 2-grade construction framing dimension lumber that can be used in any home across North America, and the customers choose which one they will have based on preference and also what kind of deal they can get. So in this context, it would be sort of logical to say that the southern species, which are not affected by the duty, price changes show us a trend quite different from what happened in the north. Now, while I talk about this, I want everyone to remember that the main species among these three, Western spruce pine fir, is also produced in the US. Eastern spruce pine fir comes out of Quebec and New York State. Western spruce pine fir comes out of British Columbia, Alberta, Washington State, Oregon, and a little bit out of Idaho. The southern pine, we choose the east side price. These are all the ones that are traded at the highest volume, and so we can say they are the ones that set the price. There are specialty items for lumber like Douglas fir and other species. They have their own price trend and they are specialized. So it's a little bit of a different animal. So the trend line for this year for those three, when I compare to the last 2 years, so 2024 and 2023, has really been and is showing a nice stability. Don't miss out. Subscribe now. Your colleagues and competitors are already using Madison's Lumber Reporter every week as the full price list gets updated. I plotted those highs and those lows, found out what is the spread, and I used what we would call the last normal year, 2019, as a metric for these changes that we're having now in 2025. I will show you that in 1 second. I want to give the context of what is going on with the forestry and the lumber in the view of this, looking at the prices. So the sawmills, especially in the north and the west, have been much more disciplined now than they used to be in the past, 5-10 years ago, in curtailing. And the manufacturing volumes have been kept lower in line with that lower demand for the housing construction, as I said. So in general, to put it into perspective, a sawmill would rather sell 40 rail cars at a reasonable price than 4 rail cars at some impossible number, unsustainable number. the equation for the sawmills is a stable amount of volume at a good price. The sawmills are not trying to make the price of lumber triple. The sawmills are trying to have their operation running fluidly. It takes quite a long time to book loggers to bring the logs into the mill and then to make the lumber and ship it out. So the sawmills are planning, generally speaking, a sawmill will plan a year and a half, 6 quarters, but they're planning like 6 months ahead, making the investment in getting the logs as they are trying to figure out what will happen with the market 6 months later and then what the price can be. So it's very complicated. There's a lot of interrelationships between nature, the forest, and the manufacturing, the facility, and then the end user of the housing construction. And so the capacity utilization rates, especially in Canada, are still low compared to optimal. And in the US, they're sort of flat, but it's been also up and down quite a bit. So to keep in mind, there is a phenomenal amount of lumber volume able to come back online at existing facilities across North America. So let's look at some of the graphs. I'm going to tell you the story of what is going up and down with lumber, and then show you these prices and that spread compared to 2019, so people can understand in their own facility what they think might happen to the end of this year, but also especially what might happen next year, 2026. So starting with the Madison's Lumber Prices Index, yes, it is down over the previous week and the previous month. However, it is up compared to the same week last year and is also up compared to the same week in 2023. We'll see how this trend continues next year. This is the same data in a graph showing you this year compared to the last previous years. Of course, we have that great volatility that happened in 2021 and 2022, but the following years much more stable. The thick black line with that slight downturn on week 33 is this year, 2025. Drilling down into some details, Western Spruce Pine Fir KD 2x4 number 2 and better is the largest component of the index you were just looking at. This item is currently priced at US $450 per thousand board feet, has essentially lost all incremental gains since June to end up just $20 from what it was at that time. The high for 2025 was $550 in March. The low was $430 in early June. So the spread is a 24% difference. Compared to the same week in 2019, when it was $349 per thousand, the current week is up $128 or 28%, and that spread is a 25% difference. Southern Yellow Pine 2x4 on the east side, this is not a component of the index. That item is now US $365 per thousand board feet. It lost $181 from the high of $537 in April. The current week is the low for this year. The spread between high and low is a 38% difference compared to the same week in 2019 when it was $393. The current week is down $28 or 7% with a spread of 7%. Taking a look at the market leaders, the benchmark items, those top three, Western Spruce, Southern Pine, Eastern Spruce, as you can see, down from the previous week and the previous month. Below that is studs. Can't build a house without studs. Then you have Douglas Fir Green, a specialty item, flat over the previous week. Canadian Softwood Plywood, also flat over the previous week, but down slightly from the month previous. This is that same data plotted on a graph showing you 2-year rolling price history. On the far left, August of 2023, and on the far right, the present. So you can see a nice moderation away from the volatility that we used to see 2020 to 2022. And expectation going forward would be for the rest of this year either flat or down. And next year, well, no one knows. So to me, this is absolutely fascinating. The previous, where I showed you the spread, that was that item compared to historical. Here is the spread of each item against each other. So for this week, between Western spruce and Eastern spruce is a 35% difference, while in August of 2019, it was a 21% difference. Just a reminder that I'm using 2019 as the last, quote, normal year before all the volatility and changes to society that has been happening. So for Western spruce versus Southern pine, this week it was a 21% difference, while the same week in 2019 it was a 12% difference. And Eastern spruce versus Southern yellow pine, this week was a 55% difference, and in August it was a 7% difference. I'll be watching this closely. Probably in 1 year, I'll look again to see where we are and hopefully maybe be able to get some understanding about what the customers are doing, the end users, between which items they choose for their applications. So here they are, those three items as a 3-year rolling price history. The yellow line is Eastern spruce, which lost some gains but not all, and is now up $95 from the low of $545 in May to currently US $640 per thousand board feet. The high for that item was $700 in early August. The spread between the high and low is 25% difference. Compared to the same week in 2019, when it was $432, the current week is up $208 or 32%, with a 39% difference spread. Okay, so interesting, right? Now, going forward for this year, there have been times when the sawmill price, asking price, increased in September, maybe even the beginning of October, which was when the weather was nice across the continent and the do-it-yourself and remodeling sector was so active that demand at the retailers caused demand at the sawmills to increase enough for the prices to come up. People will remember, as I've said in other videos, the retailers don't set the price. So that's why it's important to keep an eye on what is happening week to week, even though generally you can say how the price moves throughout the year. There have been many times where things did not go as normal. So for this year, expectations are, again, given no big unusual something to happen, is a moderation downward from now to the end of the year. In terms of the actual mills, what we have at the moment is in the U.S. West, the Western spruce producers, so Washington State, Oregon, and a little bit Idaho, have been quietly taking downtime and not announcing, but curtailing or reducing manufacturing volume to keep supply in line with this lower demand that we have. And the other thing that happened, especially for the northern species, is the attempt of the Canadians to increase incrementally the price of the lumber going into the U.S. in an effort to pass at least part of the duty on to the customer. Did not work. There was a lot of pushback, counter offers, or the customers simply did not buy at that price, which means it was rejected. And those incremental increases that were happening from, let's say, June and July dropped off at the end of August, and we're basically back to where we were when we started, which does not bode well for next year when housing comes back. It means that at this point, 35% duty on Canadian wood going into the U.S. will indeed be eaten by the Canadian mills, giving them just further incentive to find customer offshore where there is no trade barrier. So the lumber futures, which we don't really comment on, people can find out for themselves, that is public data, but it also dropped off from recent highs, giving people concern about softness for demand going forward. In southern pine, again on the east side, the suppliers have reported discount on the narrow items, the 2x4, 2x6 sales. Prices have been at a discount to cash print. That's what we do, meaning it's possible that in the future there will be a two-tier market developing. It depends on how much supply is out there. And at the ports in New Jersey, the Eastern stocking wholesalers are saying that the market feels oversupplied and demand is underwhelming. So Madison's Lumber Reporter is a price guide independent for the North America sawmilling industry since 1952. I'm the third owner, based in Vancouver, British Columbia. We track 500 individual softwood lumber and panel commodity prices every week. So my customers who log into the dashboard can see on Friday mornings what is the new price, and they can also see the commentary which explains why those prices changed. The dashboard can do a lot. All of these images that you see here come from the dashboard. People are able to compare items against each other, look at the graphs, compare to historical, plot against macroeconomic data, search back over the commentary to look for keywords and see what happened over the past few weeks. And in other ways, very robust for whatever purpose it is that they need to do. So if you like what you see here, click like so this video will get recommended to other viewers. Subscribe here on YouTube so you will be notified when we make another update. And if you do need more than these small snapshots that we do sometimes for YouTube, a little bit on the website, the full data, here in the caption is a link. Go to the website, fill out the form to get a sample. And you will see the full list of those 500 individual softwood lumber and panel commodity prices that we track and what the price is that week. And you will see the commentary explaining why those prices are changing.